Silence fell over the auditorium before the last note even faded. Zariah, my 9-year-old daughter, still had her fingers hovering above the keys when she realized there wouldn't be any applause. The emptiness was so heavy it felt like everyone had stopped breathing. Then behind me, a whisper cut through the stillness. "That's the poor girl, the one with the single mom." The blood pounded in my ears. For a moment I was glued to my seat, wondering if Zariah had heard it too. She bowed with the discipline she'd practiced at home, lifted her eyes, and looked for any sign of approval. All she found were blank faces and impatient phones. Months earlier, we'd bought a little used keyboard at a neighborhood yard sale. Between math worksheets and science readings, she'd slip on her headphones and play late into the night, polishing every chord of the song she wrote for this performance. To her, it wasn't just a school talent show number. It was her chance to say, "I belong." When the curtain started to close, I finally felt my body move. I stood up and clapped, loud, steady, firm. The sound echoed, alone at first, until a mom 2 rows up joined me. A dad, hesitant, did the same. In seconds, the applause turned into a wave. Zariah blinked, surprised, and her chin quivered. The smile that spread didn't ask anyone's permission. She opened her arms in a shy but vibrant thank you, and that energy swept across the stage like warm surf. We rode the bus home, the keyboard balanced on our knees. On the way, she rested her head on my shoulder and whispered, "Thanks for not leaving me up there alone." I squeezed her hand, still feeling the vibration of the claps I'd started by myself, and said, "You were never alone." They just needed to hear the first note to get it. That night, the injustice left marks. But it left something bigger too, the certainty that even when the world whispers labels, one act of courage can turn silence into a voice. Her eyes met mine. For a second, I could see everything there. Disappointment, confusion, shame, and I fought to keep my tears in. I was getting ready to stand up, grab her hand, and pull her out of that auditorium like running from a fire when something unexpected happened. From the last row, a tall man with graying hair and a plain gray suit stood up by himself. He didn't smile or speak, he just started walking down the aisle toward the stage. The audience's whisper grew, the judges exchanged looks not knowing what to do, and I held my breath. Something in the rhythm of his steps stopped my urge to bolt. Right then I realized, this wasn't the end of the story. It was the beginning. I'm Maya Reeve, 33, single mom to Zariah since she was 2. We live in a small town in southern Indiana where everyone waves but also notices what car you drive and whether your kid's backpack is new or secondhand. At the grocery store, people smile and then ask someone why you're still single. It was in that place that everything changed, and the story that started in that auditorium was far from over. Have you ever felt present and invisible at the same time? I feel that way almost every day. Then the school talent show rolls around and I'm reminded, loud and clear, that I don't fit in that world, at least not the way they do. My day starts early. In the morning, I clean the elementary school classrooms. At night, I trade the uniform for the greasy t-shirt at the 24-hour diner on the highway, pouring coffee for truckers and fries for sleepless teenagers. There's no glamour. There's honesty. It pays the bills. And most of all, it keeps up what matters most, taking care of Zariah. Zariah is my why. She speaks softly. Her heart's huge. She doesn't mix with the popular kids or care about trends. What drives her life is music, not chart toppers, but sounds that seem to come from some old place in the soul. She started making melodies at 7, recording them on her phone and describing each one like weather. This sounds like rain. This one feels like longing. Last spring, I scraped together $60 and bought a used keyboard at a yard sale. No stand. The B-flat key was sticky, but it lit up when you turned it on. To her, it was pure magic. Since then, she gets home from school, flips it on, and lets her fingers hover over the keys like she's revealing a secret. She plays for hours, sometimes with her eyes closed, as if the whole world fits there between one note and the next. She was chasing a sound only she could hear. When the school announced the talent show, Zariah came up and asked in a whisper if she could sign up. I hesitated for a second. She's never liked the spotlight, but she said, "I want them to hear what I wrote." That's what she called it, not the performance, not the song, just what I wrote. She turned in the form with a pride that filled the room. In the weeks that followed, she practiced every day. While I fixed dinner, she played in the next room. Sometimes I'd pause the spoon in midair just to listen better. Every note carried a piece of story. It wasn't practice, it was narrative. Under that glow, though, I saw the tremor. At school, she's the kid who brings lunch in a grocery sack, not a bright lunchbox. Her shoes are clean, but always a season behind. Stepping on stage meant more than music. It meant being noticed. Even so, she didn't back down. The night before, she asked me to braid her hair. Pretty, but not like she'd tried too hard. She laid out her best dress, the one from last Easter. I reinforced the hem that was coming loose, ironed the fabric, and got it ready like tuning a string before the final chord. On the night of the show, the lights were low and the audience buzzed softly. She took a deep breath. When the curtain lifted and the first chord filled the hall, I got it. The sound she'd been chasing was now rushing through everyone, and the chorus hadn't even started yet. She ripped the hem off her dress with a single yank, like she had to free herself from something invisible before walking through the door. She glanced at her own reflection, flashed a quick smile, and right then I knew nothing could stop her. We got to the theater before the first dressing room light turned on. In the hallways, kids strutted around in feathers and sequins, practicing steps in an improvised ballet. Parents huddled in little islands of chatter, trading tips on extra classes and plans for the next holiday. I settled in the middle of the audience, hands clasped, pretending to be calm. When they called Zariah's name, my body leaned forward like the seat itself demanded a front-row view. She walked to the piano with measured steps, chin up, shoulders squared, but her fingers, oh, those fingers, gave away the storm inside. I whispered, "Go, my love." On the bench, she adjusted the mic the way she'd practiced, took a deep breath, and set her hands on the keys. The first notes came out delicate, almost an invitation. "Come in, listen to this memory only I know." The melody floated over the hall like a whispered secret, a lullaby stitched from longing and promise. It was nothing like the acts before, no backing track, no choreography, just her. And in that respectful hush, woven note by note, the whole room seemed to shift. There were no distractions, only a piano telling stories through the hands of a girl who just ripped her own hem to fit inside her dream. When the first chords slid from the piano, I braced myself on the edge of my seat, chest swelling with pride. Zariah closed her eyes and let the melody lead her. I expected to see the crowd swept up in the same current, but as my gaze moved around the room, I found a different scene. In the back row, parents were whispering. 2 kids up front traded muffled giggles. A judge in a baggy blazer dropped his eyes to his phone and started typing. The woman beside me opened a pack of gum like she was killing time in a lobby. That's when the sentence sliced through the air, clear. That poor girl, the one with the single mom. It didn't just reach my ears, it drove itself into my spine. I leaned forward to see who had said it, but I already knew the type. People who never had to explain to their child why Santa only brought one present, who never had to choose between fixing the car or paying for the school trip. I bit the inside of my cheek until I tasted metal. I wanted to stand up, confront them, shout that my daughter was more than the label they'd just slapped on her. But my legs wouldn't move. My pulse hammered in my throat, my body locked. Up front, Zariah didn't waver. Her fingers stayed steady, every note carrying a story no snap judgment could shrink. And while she played, I realized the best answer to that label was in the keys, and she would give it right up to the final beat. She walked up to the piano like someone crossing a shaky bridge. The hall yawned with boredom, but she ignored it. She let her fingers land on the keys and released the melody, note by note, as if each sound could crack open a window in the listener's heart. When she reached the last measure, she chose a delicate, hanging chord that resolved nothing, and that's exactly why it begged for an answer. Silence followed. Not one clap, not the collective sigh that usually trails something beautiful. Just the dry creak of a seat, a cough from the head judge, the rustle of pages turning. She bowed the way we practiced, held the reverence a heartbeat longer, and raised her face, promising strength. In that moment, I saw the smile give way. It flattened into a hard, misunderstood line. She left the stage slowly, eyes glued to the floor, carrying her own silence. I wanted to run to her, wrap her shoulders, tell her that her music mattered even when no one clapped. But I was stuck in my seat, hands cold, scared that if I stood up, the whole world would collapse with me. When I looked around, the made-up moms were already chatting about schedules, purses, results. They hadn't heard what I heard. Maybe they never will. Still, in that split second when the cord hung in the air, I knew Zariah's truth never depended on anyone's approval. And if she ever doubts it, I'll remind her of the power tucked inside that silence so she'll play again. And maybe, just maybe, someone will finally listen. The crowd kept buzzing, indifferent, while the judges compared notes. I was bracing for the next act when something shifted. In the back, a man stood up. Unlike the rest, he wore a plain suit. He wasn't filming on his phone. He wasn't clapping. He just stared at the stage, motionless. He walked down the aisle. Each step made the chatter wilt. "Who's that?" someone whispered. The judges traded looks. The next act was a group dance. No one was supposed to be talking. Even so, he kept going, hands clasped behind his back, like a man who knows everyone's watching. I spotted Zariah at the edge of the stage, half hidden in the shadows. She clutched her folder of sheet music to her chest, shoulders hunched. She wasn't crying, but her silence said plenty. The man reached the front row and turned toward the judge's table. "Excuse me," he asked, voice calm but firm. "May I use the microphone for a moment?" That's all he said, no dramatic gestures, and yet the whole room held its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. The request was brief, almost restrained. The audience held its breath. A judge in a burgundy blazer looked up, gave a small signal, and took the microphone from a student. He walked to the center of the stage, turned to everyone, and said, "I'm Dr. Elias Monroe. I wasn't supposed to be here tonight. My flight was canceled, and with nothing else to do, I decided to watch my granddaughter's performance." That's when I heard something that stopped me in my tracks. The whole room leaned forward. I've spent my life teaching piano at Juilliard. I've trained soloists, film composers, orchestra musicians. I've rarely heard a piece that moved me as much as the one that little girl just played. The silence shifted. Now it was reverence. He turned toward the wings. "Zariah, did you write that piece yourself?" She nodded shyly. Monroe faced the audience again. "Folks, we've just heard an original composition, a genuine voice, art." A few people sighed. I heard someone whisper Juilliard, as if the word were a talisman. "I'd like to ask a favor," he went on. "Zariah, with your permission, would you play it again? This time, may I accompany you?" The air seemed to hold its collective breath. She looked to me. I gave her the smallest nod I could, fighting back tears. Zariah walked back to the piano on almost silent steps. Monroe waited for her to sit, then took only half the bench, leaving room for the star of the night. Both their hands hovered above the keys. The room, caught in the moment, knew it was about to hear something unique, and no one dared to move. The silence before the first note lasts longer than a sigh. When Zariah touches the keys, the sound is still timid, but something shifts as soon as Dr. Monroe slides chords under her melody. It's like two voices finally meeting. Neither overpowers the other. They walk side by side. The jokes in the back stop. Chairs creak as parents lean forward. Judges' pens freeze in midair. Every eye turns to the stage. Note after note, the music grows, breathes, fills every corner of the room. A heartbeat before the end, the last harmony hangs in the air and the auditorium holds its breath. Then the explosion. The whole audience rises, applause crashing like a high tide, phones popping up above heads. I see one judge wipe her eyes. My own palms burn as I join the celebration. Zariah stays seated, hands resting in her lap. Her eyes are still wide, now filled with good amazement. Dr. Monroe leans in and whispers something only for her. A nod. She stands. The bow that was shy before now has purpose. Chin lifted, she takes in everything she was denied the first time. As they leave the stage, whispers ripple through the rows. Who is that girl? Parents who barely noticed her try to get a better look. Kids trade quiet comments, amazed. In that moment, Zariah is no longer the poor girl. She's a musician. She's been seen, and all of us, including her, know that nothing will be the same. The judges had barely left their table and were already heading backstage, clipboards clutched to their chests, smiling like they'd found treasure. I was still in the audience, hands hot, heart racing, eyes wet. In that instant, I didn't care what anyone thought. All I saw was my daughter being recognized, not for what we lack, but for who she is. As soon as she came down the ramp, she flew into my arms. "I did it," she murmured, her voice muffled against my chest. I was speechless. I could only hold her tighter. Dr. Monroe showed up moments later, wearing the same smile he had on stage. He held out his hand, but before I could shake it, he said, "Your daughter has something rare. It's not just talent, it's truth. I found my own voice tonight, too. Thank you for letting all of us hear it." I shook my head, not knowing what to say. Then he pulled out a business card, the name embossed, a New York address. "If you're willing," he went on, "I'd like to introduce her to a Young Composers Arts Foundation. Immersive weekends, one-on-one mentoring. She won't need to audition. I've heard enough." I looked at the card, then at him. "She's never had formal lessons," I confessed, "and right now we can't afford much." "That's no obstacle," he said. "What matters is access. Talent like hers needs to be nurtured, not just noticed." Zariah lifted her face, asking permission with just her eyes. I nodded, fighting not to break down. "Say, thank you, sir." "Thank you, sir," she repeated, her voice small but steady. Dr. Monroe tilted his head and disappeared into the crowd. Back home later, Zariah refused to take off the dress. She sat on the living room floor, hugging her guitar like it was part of her, ready to play again, as if the stage were still there, waiting. I found her sitting on the floor, keyboard resting on her legs, humming a tune that had just popped into her head. I came in with 2 bowls of cereal. Cooking wasn't in the cards that night, and we threw together a picnic on the blanket under the lazy ceiling fan. She played a few bars, then locked eyes with me. "Do you think I can really go?" she asked, talking about the place the song mentioned. I tucked a curl behind her ear and answered, "You're already there." 5 months ago, my daughter changed everything just by being herself. We're still in the same tiny house. I still juggle 2 jobs and bring home restaurant leftovers when I can. Her shoes still come from thrift shops sometimes. But something's different. Now she sees herself differently. Every Saturday before the sun comes up, we stick a thermos of hot chocolate in the cup holder and hit the road to the conservatory an hour away. Soft music drifts through the car. She leans her face against the window and watches the cornfields roll by. She's not the kid who used to tremble on stage, scared no one would hear her. Now she talks about dynamics, layers, the emotion tucked inside a minor chord. Her mentors say her compositions have a depth they rarely see in much older students. Once in a while, she revisits that first piece, the one no one clapped for, but now it sounds different, solid, full, like every note belongs to her, and it does. I've changed too. For a long time, I thought I just had to keep my head down, be thankful for what we had, and not ask for anything else. I figured if I could shield my daughter from judgment and failure, everything would be fine. Now I know she didn't need a shield. She needed permission to speak up, take up space, and trust her own voice even when the room doesn't react. That night, I almost let the moment slip. She was getting ready to leave the stage, sure the silence meant, "You're not enough." Then Dr. Monroe, a stranger who decided to pay attention, stood up. He didn't rescue her, he just let her music bounce back. One simple act, no speech, that reminded my daughter she wasn't invisible. That gesture didn't change everything overnight, but it gave her something you can't wrap or read at bedtime, the certainty that she deserves to be seen. And it taught me something else. The end of our story isn't in other people's silence. When nobody claps, the show isn't over. We keep going because someday someone will listen, and that someone can change everything. Whenever Zariah's fingers touch the piano, nothing else matters. There's no crowd, no expectations, just the truth ringing in every note. She's not after applause, she's trying to spill what's inside her. That honest sound is exactly what the world needs to hear. If watching this made you think of the day you got ignored or the moment someone finally saw you, this video already did its job. So like it now, share it with someone who needs the reminder that soft voices still matter. In the comments, tell your story. Who was your Zariah? When did you find your own voice? I read everything. And if you want more stories that make your heart pound, subscribe to the channel. There's a lot more to share. Thanks for watching. Thanks for caring. Most of all, thanks for listening.